Welcome everybody out to our Juneteenth school board meeting. I'd like to, Jen, if we could have a roll call.
Rich Carnation.
Here.
Bill Adams.
Here.
Stephanie Ahmad. Here. Eric Heights.
Here.
Malin Ali Lopez.
Here.
And new student board member Jackson Caligari.
Here.
All righty, thank you. And if we can have the flag salute by Vice President Adams.
Okay. Join me in facing the flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. 2.3, Superintendent Decker, is there anything to report out of closed session? Thank you.
Through the chair, I'm pleased to report that in closed session, the board was briefed on very good news about, oh, there goes my chair down low. It's good news. I'm going to stand like this.
Did it fall really?
That the COLA is for this year going to be more than we expected. There's 1.23% more in our cost of living allocation for next year. It's about $400,000. And the board, with the advice and recommendations of the superintendent and the chief business officer and the human resources director, decided to make that a district-wide increase in all staff salary next year. So we will apply that $400,000. So kudos to the staff and good for all of us that, at least right now, it looks like the money is good for next year's budget. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. All righty. Moving on to 3.1, adjustments to the agenda. Is there anything that anybody needs to move around? Okay, no. Let's go to 3.2, celebrating success. Annette Zacconi, principal of Brooks Elementary, will be giving this presentation.
Hi, good morning, everybody. If you could do me a favor and take the slide deck down so that I can introduce our speakers tonight. I want them to get a little bit of airtime. I'm not sure who's watching out there because I know tip-off just happened, and I know where my husband is not here supporting me. Yeah. Okay, so I want to let my guest speakers, because they, hit the pause on their summer break to come and share successes for the year. So I'll let them one by one introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Allie Hartley, and I'm the garden coordinator at Brooks Elementary. This is my first year in the position, and I'm really excited to be bringing the garden to the kids at Brooks. And I want to introduce one of our students. This is Elan. Say hi. Tell them.
Hello,
What grade are you going into?
I'm going into 4th grade.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Eva.
She put it up. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Robertson, and I am the grades 3 through 5 music teacher and visual and performing arts teacher on special assignment. And this is going into my 4th year with the district, and very excited to be here with my student, Sydney Wagner. Sorry. And tell them.
Hi, I'm Sydney Wagner, and I'm going into 6th grade.
All right, we can do the slide deck now. Thanks, Lisa. All right, so we have a limited amount of time to celebrate success, so we had to whittle it down to a few things. Our school vision is to engage, encourage, and empower students. Not all those names up there are accurate. You just met the speakers. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I have it. Oh, I have the power. There it is. All right. So, this is the wrong slide. That's okay. We're going to move on to the next one. So before I talk about the rest stop, I just want to say that our teachers this year went through a little over 22 hours of training in project-based learning to help them look through the curriculum that we have that's standards-based and turn it into more deeply engaging activities that include hands-on real-world application. And so they've had a ton of training. They did create one project for the last trimester of school, and this school will be creating projects for each trimester, and they'll have common planning time to do that, and they'll be looking through and deeply into their current curriculum, as well as outside sources to create some kind of living activities for our students, and we're super excited and proud of them. So this slide refers to our efforts this year at providing support for students with regards to their social and emotional wellness. We knew our kids were going to be returning from very different situations. Ooh, that's very cool. Ooh, fancy. And so we knew that that had to be a focus for us. It had to be a focus for us ourselves and our staff. As excited as we were to come back to full-time learning, we knew there were going to be a lot of different things we needed to adjust to, like mask wearing and all of the protocol and regarding the COVID mitigation. Luckily, that all softened during the year and smiles came out big by spring. We were super happy to be able to see each other and make connection, full face connection. So we developed, my brilliant counselors developed an area that is the counseling center, but it's also known affectionately as the rest stop. It's a space that's available on campus for kiddos to access our counseling services, to take self-regulation breaks during the day, and then it also serves as a quiet period for lunchtime for students who choose that and desire that. Here's some more evidence of activities, and you can see students there in kind of our cozy corners, some of them doing art. There's cards and games, lots of fun stuff to do, and it's the quietest place you'll ever see 20 children. It's amazing how the yard supervisors are able to keep them honoring the agreement that this is a quiet space. All right, there's just a little bit more, and you can see the little box in the top right. We actually have a spot where kids can self-refer to the counselor if they need some support, and so they do that, and that's a really wonderful strategy and skill that they're learning to take care of themselves. So I'm going to pass it on to my next speaker.
All right. So I wanted to talk about the garden program a little bit. So this is our new garden program. It started about 1.5 years ago, and we have thanks to WSD, we have an amazing infrastructure set up for these kids, a great outdoor classroom space. In the picture that you guys are seeing, it's just recently planted. So now it looks much different even 1.5 months later. Everything is growing. We've got sunflowers. It's beautiful right now. The fence, the shed, the greenhouse that we got. The greenhouse allowed us to send home a plant with every student this year. So every student got to take home at least one plant if they wanted to. And so it's become this wonderful space at our school, this kind of little island of green in the campus where students can come and learn. So thanks for the support from WSD for the greenhouse, the fence, the shed. That all added so much to the garden this year. We also have had a lot of support from the community, from different grants and different donations to keep the program going and just enhance what we've already created. The program is thriving. Every student, the 500-ish students at Brooks, every student gets to come at least once a month for a special 45-minute garden program, in addition to having an open recess on Mondays. So I open the gates for each of the recesses, and students can come and choose to spend their recess in the garden instead of on the play yard. And surprisingly, kids really want to come dig in the dirt. They want to get their hands dirty, and just every Monday, kids are like, where can I dig, Mrs. Hartley? Where can I dig? They just want to get their hands in the dirt and dig. And I like to joke that it's the carrot, literally the carrot at the end that they come for, because they really want to try all the different foods that we have growing in the garden, and they get special privileges to try things that are in smaller quantities that maybe the other kids of 30 don't get to try. So they spend their recess digging, weeding, watering, kind of exploring the garden, and then tasting at the very end. The monthly classes, here, I'll skip I'm talking too fast. So here's a nice photo of Elon here, but exploring in the garden. So some of the things that we've done are investigating the just plant life as well as the animal life that have come to the garden, planting seeds in our greenhouse, watching all these life forms evolve and the life cycles. We got some really good examples of life cycles of ladybugs this year, and that was really fun for the kids to watch. So also some hands-on up in the top corner there, soil testing. So they're testing the soil in all of the different areas of the garden. And also cooking. So besides just learning how to garden and what that means, they're also learning what to do with the food that they're taking out of the garden, trying new fruits and vegetables, and then putting those into recipes that they can try at school and then take those recipes home. So some examples, we made a high vitamin C salad, strawberry kale smoothies, winter salads with kale and pomegranates, and then a seedy trail mix after we learned all about seeds and the structure and function of seeds. So some of the favorites from the kids were carrots, melons, purple basil, snap peas, and tomatoes. And then I'm going to let Elon tell you what some of his favorites were.
Do you mind? So none of them picked kale?
Oh, they liked the kale, surprisingly. They
Oh.
put a lot of them were like, I don't know about this, but in the smoothies, it went very popular.
Okay, just checking.
I promise. And sorrel, if anybody's ever had sorrel, that was another big time favorite. All right, take it away, Elon.
What I liked about the garden is how eco-friendly it is and the ladybugs. What I tried was tomatoes and basil. And in my opinion, the best part about the garden is the outdoor classroom and how you get to learn about all the plants.
And what plant did you get to take home this year?
A mint plant.
Is it growing well?
Yes.
Good. All right. And then do you want to go ahead and pass those out? I'll take your cards. And then we got everybody a little gift from the gardens, just some, if you haven't smelled it already, some little herb satchels from the garden. Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So my mother had a lot of containers and stuff. She was a gardener and has a lot of extra things that are available. Is that something that you would want as a donation, or do you want any kind of outreach of, terracotta and plastic containers and all the different things that go along with? Thank you.
The smaller plastic containers, like little 4-inch pots,
Yeah.
definitely. We definitely take those for those to good use. The pots, we do most of the things in the ground because of our irrigation system or in raised beds that are attached to the irrigation.
Sure.
So
if there's others out there that might be interested in donating, we're open to accepting things and receiving things. Great.
we received a rolling
Mhm.
composter from one of our parents. We received a worm bin from some of our parents. So some scrap pieces of wood that we're going to make into signs for the garden. So things like that, we're definitely
Great.
taking.
Well, we'll do some outreach for you. Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Music is absolutely thriving this year at Brooks. Especially with our 4th and 5th graders, were entirely virtual last year. So this year it was just so exciting to see grades 3 through 5 in the music room. In the music room, that was a new music room for them. Room 20 was new as of last year, so having us in room 20 was really exciting. But what's thriving too is project-based learning in the music classroom. This year we did 2 major projects, one of which was making instruments, and you see some examples here on the pictures. Students and families donated materials for students to create their own instruments. We studied about how instruments are created, we studied about different materials that they're made and how they make sounds, and then students were given a class period to either do it on their own or do it with a partner, and they just ran with it, and it was phenomenal what they came up with. Some were more representative and some made amazing sounds. And the other project that students did was a digital production with their Chromebooks project, in which students created beats, melodies, and bass lines using digital tools and then created their own music. So we have a quick clip of that. I want to hear a student's example. Oh, my mic. Oh, there we go. Is our music working on it? I know it takes time. If it's not working, I'm happy to send a clip to the board members as well. Well, the digital music's a little bit harder to demonstrate.
Maybe you could hum a few bars.
Oh, even then it's kind of hard.
And while we're waiting,
So what we can do while we're waiting, one thing that I can also share is one of the highlights of our program this year as well was the addition of an electives program, including fifth grade band. All of our students had the opportunity to take band. Instruments were provided free from the Luther Burbank Center Music for Schools program. And students had the opportunity to play trumpet, trombone, clarinet, bell set or percussion drums, and flute. So we had lots of different options. And for many of these students, it was the first time that they picked up an instrument, a band instrument. And so they could choose to take 1, 2, or 3 trimesters of band. And it gave them opportunity to be kind of get their fingers and ears ready to get them excited about band for 6th grade. Here we go. Created by students. Play Down by the Station for you, Sydney.
Sorry,
Nice deep breath. You're doing good.
I didn't practice before this.
You're good. They're big. These are your big cheerleaders.
We also did disco deck the halls with them.
Oh, some people heard the disco deck the halls with boomwhackers at Christmas time. And
if I could mention one thing to Elizabeth, my son, who's recently graduated college, so it's been many years ago, when he was in the STEM Corps at the high school, one of their big projects during the summer between starting the STEM Corps was to invent a musical instrument of some kind, and then they had to play the happy birthday song with it. So maybe that'd be a little outreach. You could talk to the STEM people to see if they're still doing that. They could come down, or you could go up to the high school and do a little share of your instrument making. So that'd be fun.
wonderful.
All right, so that concludes our presentation. I just wanted to make a comment that it was very exciting to see kind of hearts and eyes and souls light up as we started to take off the masks and get a little closer as a community and connect. The other thing that it's my privilege is to watch staff and teachers like this whose passions, are nurtured and can come alive. And so, my hope as a leader of this school is to continue to support the staff in doing what they do, because they're genuinely amazing, and it's my privilege to support them. So thank you for your support this year. It was not an easy year for you either, and the work that you do may not be recognized or thanked very often, but from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate the time and commitment you spend supporting our kids and supporting those of us that are in there doing the work for the kids. So enjoy your satchels, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot, Annette. I just got a young lady. You've got guts. I remember when I was exactly your grade, and I was a drummer, and I remember I had to play a little drum solo to Sweet Caroline. And I was so petrified, and I thought I was so embarrassed. I never had the guts. I could not have done what you just did at your age. And so hats off to you for being real brave. And you did a solo. I did it with a whole bunch of other kids around there, and all their parents clapping too. So anyhow, it just brings back great old memories of being scared to death. And I just wanted to acknowledge how brave you are. So you're going to do great. Thank you.
I also wanted to congratulate Ms. Zacconi. Thank you so much for your presentation. I just want to say that it really warms my heart, and it makes me so happy to see the kids doing hands-on tactile things after being online for such a long time. And I feel that that's so wonderful for them right now. So thank you.
Yeah, I had a similar comment. It's good to see all that you're doing now that you're back in person, and just all of the different things that you're taking advantage of to support students. I remember going to a garden work day maybe about a year ago where we were putting in irrigation. And so it's really nice to see it come to fruition. I can't wait to see it in bloom. So I'll have to come by soon and see. And then Elon, thank you for presenting. Thank you for the satchel. It smells amazing. Thank you so much. And Cindy, you definitely have guts, and I can't play that instrument. So you can do something that probably some of us up here can't do. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, moving to 3.3, public comment for non-agenda items. Let me just read this real quick. Any person may address the board on any consent item or in any item not listed on the agenda. Pursuant to the Brown Act, during this period, the board is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. We ask that the public comment be spoken into the microphone from the podium in accordance with the BP 9323. Individual speakers may be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda item or non-agenda item. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. The president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. And with that, I'd like to open up the meeting to any public comment for anybody. Somebody, I didn't read that all for nothing. No, I'm just kidding. All righty, thank you. Not hearing anything at this point, we're going to move on to 3.4, superintendent's report.
Yes, well, first I want to welcome Pete Sullivan as our incoming HR director, man in the seat. Excited to have Pete. Everybody here, if there was public here, I would say more, but I think everybody here knows you, Pete. And Jackson, welcome, my friend. So we had a number of qualified people who applied for this position, and Jackson really stood out. So I'm looking forward to what you bring to this board, this team. Attended graduation, as did many of you guys, and I think they all went off great. And I wanted to put a plug in here. Trustee Adams and I attended the Sonoma County Arts Education Alliance. They put on an event at SCO called the State of Arts Education. And I was really proud, and I'm almost embarrassed because it wasn't under my watch, but I was so proud how prominently we were featured at that event. We were ahead in so many different categories, and I just think that you guys should be proud of the work that you've done to put us really at the forefront of arts education. And we broke ground at Cali. I got some videos the other day of just destroying buildings. So we're moving. It's the summer rush, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it. And honestly, much of what I would speak about to you guys is agendized today. It's really, you know, it's all there. So we'll talk more in a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. 3.5, staff association reports. Anybody got anything from staff associations want to say anything? Okay, moving on to 3.6, board of trustees reports. I think we got a few. I've got a couple, and that somebody else has. Okay. First off, I just want to, Julian Cohen, a friend of mine, lives in town. He's on the town's, I think he's on the town's art commission. And anyhow, when they're selecting, they usually have a student on the commission. And now I believe they've opened it up to where you can have 2 students on the commission. And then what they've done is they've revised the requirements or whatever you need to do to be on it. Basically, you just have to be a student that's willing to commit to being on the committee for the year. And so they had some things with GPAs and some other issues that I think were a little bit outdated and not really appropriate for what was there. And so the town council voted last night, changed some of those things. So I wanted to announce a little bit more so we can get that out there and push it out there that I believe there's going to be 2 positions for 2 students to be on the Arts Commission. And the only requirement is that, in addition to being a student, is that they will commit for the year. So Heather, if we can all work to get that out to the students as best we can, so that way some people that might not have otherwise applied or been interested in before can do that. So that was that. And then the last thing, I have another ADA announcement. My son Jimmy, the middle boy, just had a little baby this last week, a little baby boy. So they're all starting to pop like popcorn now. They've been in the microwave for about 2.5 minutes, and they're just going all over. So the budget is looking healthy in a few years. Anyhow, he named him Hudson Thrall. Okay.
Not named after a cheese?
No, that was Colby Jack. This one's Hudson Thrall, and I have no idea where it is. It's got to be the water in Utah or something. So anyhow, that was just my little whatever.
Congratulations, Grandpa.
Thank you. Getting to be a big grandpa now. So Bill?
We're going to have to add some names.
Anybody have anything else? No? Well, on a sort of the reverse serious note, I think we are missing a point if we don't take a minute to think about Uvalde, Texas. I'm sorry that Annette isn't here, but it could have been their school. And we have on our agenda some closed sessions to talk with law and fire. We have a safety plan that we're going to revisit and make sure we understand going forward. But I think one of our really important reminders is, I'm sorry, this is very close to home. We have shooting deaths as the largest source of death for school children. And we've got to do better. And I just wanted to not have the meeting go without addressing that.
We also had a former student pass away. I don't have his name with me. I meant to write it down and had forgotten, but if somebody has that, they'd like to acknowledge it. One of our North Coast Consortium. Chase McCann. Yes, that's who it was. He was a 26-year-old young man who was a former North Coast Consortium graduate through our district programs, and he passed away in a fire just a few days ago in Healdsburg. So his family and his legacy is in our thoughts tonight also.
Thanks, everybody. Okay. Moving on to 3.7, approval of minutes for March the 10th, April the 25th, May the 19th, and May 26th. If I can have a motion.
I'll motion to approve the minutes of the priorly read dates there.
Okay. And the second?
I'll second.
All right, we got a motion by Eric and a second from Stephanie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes 5-0, and I didn't hear you.
Preferentially, I vote aye as well.
Yes.
Done.
There you go. Got to get you in the mix here.
50 plus.
50 plus 1. Thank you. All righty, we're going to move on to, I'm going to turn over the consent items to Bill.
Okay, I would make a motion for our board to consider our consent action items as numbered on the agenda, numbers 4.1 through 4.21. I'm not aware of any conflict of interest or any board member that had asked to have any pulled for additional discussion. Okay, seeing none, I will make a motion that they be approved as submitted and on the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you.
All righty, we've got actually, you finish that up.
So we have a motion a second if there's any comments by board. Yeah.
And you do it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I do have a couple comments I'd like to make, and I think then we'll ask and see if there's any comments. I was pleased to see, I think she's back. Yay. On 4.9, there's a Cali course on Introduction to Music Production. Thank you for working on that, Elizabeth. And on 4.11, there's, we've talked about this in a prior meeting, I think, the Foundations of Art and Digital Design. And thank you, Lisa. I'm trying to count how many different courses we have from different schools, but 15 today. Thank you, as you lean forward. So yeah, I was pleased to see that as we come out of the school year to be primed for next year. That's a good sign.
I'd like to also make an acknowledgement. We don't do this often enough, and we're going to work on being a little better at this in the future. The family of Mark and Chris Adriano made a large donation of $1,300 to provide 21 sets of baseball uniforms to the high school. So that's a wonderful thing. We're pleased that we have that donation. It saves our boosters and our program. So we'll gladly take other donations, but I wanted to recognize them publicly rather than just putting it in consent.
Oh, thank you both. Also, on 4.11, I'm glad to see that we are making strides and movement in our math areas to kind of help our kids all get out of here with a really good, strong math background. And I think this additional class is going to be a good type of a bridge for the kids that are wanting to improve a little bit more. So that was just my comment. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? All righty, 501, Jen.
50 plus, yeah.
Yeah, 50 plus 1.
Molinaro.
All righty, so moving on, let's see. Moving on to 5.1, update of the facilities master plan. This will be introduced by Austin, our CBO.
We can call Jen and Trent up to the podium. You guys can welcome them. They are from Cost Studio and King Consulting. And then Brian, if you want, you can jump up there or you can stay seated, whatever you want. Cool.
Just to remind you, we
Caesar, you too, of course.
we contracted with these guys to create our facilities master plan, and we've been doing some work, but we realized that, you know what, it was time to put them before you so you could kind of catch up on the work we've been doing. So that's what they're here to do today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having us. We do have a presentation. I don't know if it can be
If
pulled
you
up.
could, those microphones are
Oh,
really, really
I'm
specialized.
sorry. Can you
Yeah,
hear
so
me
whoever's
now?
talking, if they can just be like right in front of it.
Okay.
Thanks.
I know, like COVID, you're like, how close do I get to a microphone?
6 centimeters.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Gibb, Vice President at King Consulting, and I'm here with Trent Summers, Principal Architect of Casa Studio. Thank you so much for having us. We've been working, as Mr. Decker said, we've been working with staff on the facility master planning, and we're appreciative to be here and it's been exciting. So we want to update you on the process so far and then some future work that you'll be seeing in the upcoming months. And where did I point this at? Sorry. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Jen. So my name is Trent Summers. I'm the principal architect of Casa Studio. We have an office in Napa, San Diego, and Sacramento. We're a small architecture firm, but we look to work with local districts, and we have collaboratively with Jen on a number of districts in your area that we'll get to in a second. But we are definitely very excited to be here. We have a process that Jen said we'll work you through, but also just to kind of put our faces in front of you and introduce the ideas that we will be moving forward with over the next couple months.
Wonderful. And then King Consulting is a facility planning and funding firm. So we work closely with architectural firms such as CASA in helping to align your facility needs with a strategy behind that. So how can we best support the district and align that to the board's strategic plan? Me personally, I've been in the school business of construction and planning for over about 15 years. Started in kindergarten. No, I ran bond programs in Napa Valley Unified, leveraged those programs with state matching money, local relationships, developer mitigation, a lot of similar things that are happening here in your district. So it's exciting to be able to support you alongside Trent and staff as we move forward in this process.
We just want to hit two on our common ideology. You'll see that we've been doing this for 22 years together. We are a client-centered organization, and we look really to be relational, to build relationships with you. So hopefully we're doing this with you for many, many years to come.
Great. And then districts that we work in or work with, as you can see, all around in Sonoma and Napa County, and some of the larger growing areas in the state, you'll see in El Dorado, Elk Grove, Sutter County. We work together in Yuba County. So very exciting. We're happy to be here. And again, King's located in Sacramento. That's where all the action happens at the state with the money, right? And policy. That's where we like to be. And CASA's right next door in Napa.
So we want to talk a little bit about the process. We want to make it very clear we are here to work collaboratively with a number of people, with the district, with your construction managers, with the state and local agencies that help govern what speak into the decisions you have to make. But really, we're here to facilitate and guide a process. We are not here to speak into the decisions you make. We're here to work with you and help you develop the best strategic plan for your district moving forward. So we want to make that really, really clear. We're here to work with and integrate ourselves into that, as well as bring in knowledge of CDE, DSA, and the regulatory efforts of the state, so that we make sure we bring full accountability to all of those levels.
And also, I think what's great about our team is we create a collaborative relationship. So sometimes you think the Division of State Architecture who approves your plans might take a little longer, right? We've collaborated and worked with them over the years where if there's something that needs to happen a little bit quicker, we'll be there and we'll be able to leverage that relationship for you. Same with the California Department of Education when they're approving your plans or your site approval. Those types of things are incredibly important as you're planning for facility improvements over the next 5 to 10 years. So we're excited to bring that as well. The process, I think this is really the most important. This is a process. It's a continuous process. And so right now, in the past, you did a master plan, you evaluated, you knew what the growth was for the next 5 to 10 years. Well, things have changed since that master planning happened. And so we've come back, you've brought us on, you understand there's a lot of things happening in your district, in your state. And so we've been evaluating your current facilities and the opportunities for growth, and or as you decline, how do you work through some of those opportunities as well. That then goes with a facilities assessment that is developed into a master plan. And then the next 2 or 3 items are really, okay, now we know all the need, right? There's a ton of it. And how do we strategically find money for it, create relationships and partnerships and alignment through your town, right? There's a lot happening in your town and community. And then what's the phasing of that? And how do we strategically make sure that the timing of the projects aligns with money, aligns with initiatives that the board has, and leave room for things like universal transitional kindergarten, which is a state unfunded mandate, right? That just came to you a couple months ago in last July. So again, I think Trent, you can speak to some of the data and inquiry.
And again, one thing you'll hear from us throughout this is that it's a process, not a product, right? We're going to work this circle and we'll move around it as needed, but it will be something that we're hopeful that you touch back on, that we create a living document for you, that we don't just give you a stack of binders and walk away. We want it to be inquiry-based and data-driven, right? We want to listen a lot, and we want to make sure that the decisions that we make and encourage you to execute are all based in data, not our opinions. And we're just going to keep working through that process over and over again to refine down a prioritized list of facility goals for you that are matched as much as we can with state and local funding to really implement and execute your facility goals moving forward.
All right, some areas of focus that, we're doing a lot here. You have a lot going on, but we wanted to drive down to some of the alignment with the board's priorities and focus. So transitional kindergarten, as I mentioned, that is a state unfunded mandate that you as a board you want to provide education for the TKs, right? That's something that we're looking at. Major deferred maintenance, understanding things that aren't as attractive as, a new football stadium, but are really important. Warm, safe, and dry, right? Making sure the lights turn on, making sure you don't have leaky roofs, paint, all of those types of things. So that's in part of our plan, and Trent's team has done some assessments. Campus parity among your elementary sites, understanding how as we grow and or change programs, how there's parity. And then responsible growth and community partners. I think there's growth in your town, and that impacts you as a district in different ways, right? And so how are we thoughtful and responsive and there for the kids ultimately, right? Your job is to provide the best educational environment so that students can have the highest achievement. And we want to be a part of that, but be doing that thoughtfully and collaboratively with the town.
And just to kind of reiterate this is our list. If there's things that we need to be put on there, please feel free to speak into this process. We will be deep diving this with you in workshops and more meetings to come. We just want to sort of identify these as what we see as your 4 sort of major challenges that we're going to find a lot of opportunity for you in.
And sorry, we'll just keep switching off. So again, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is an ongoing process. You brought us on earlier this year. We've been doing a lot of the data diving, gathering that with staff, working back and forth on a weekly basis, actually, to again, take all that data, be able to analyze it, and then come thoughtfully to disseminate that. And so some of the work that Trent's team has done is the site assessments. So they went around and reviewed all the sites, looking at everything, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, the windows, the site access, et cetera. I've been working with Austin on some of the funding analysis and opportunities so that we can align it. There's lots of funding out there. You just have to know what you want to do, and we will get it for you, right? And then putting that together in a site diagram, and that's really, I'll let Trent speak to that because that's the architectural side.
Yeah, and so I think we've started to collect a lot of data. We've got a lot of clay on the wheel, and as we start to sort of mold this, we're looking at site diagrams about how you can accommodate growth and look into expansion and really develop into the next 10 years. And then we're also going to bring back a prioritized project list to you. And again, that goes right back to that data-driven process where we'll get all of this information, and we have just been week after week collecting as much as we can, and now we're into this stage of synthesis and prioritization. So when we deliver this, you'll have site diagrams that help you sort of visualize these, as well as a quantifiable list of project prioritization. And we're coming to, in my mind, one of the most exciting component, which is the outreach, the workshops, the community input, and the development. We've been really diligent about collecting a lot of information, and really, my staff has seen every single room on your campuses. And so now we get to come out and start to share ideas and refine ideas and develop them into really executable ideas for you. So while this process has been ongoing for a while, we're reaching the point where it gets really exciting for us to come share with you.
It's kind of like a construction project, right? You don't see a lot, and then all of a sudden you see a building. So that's all the work that we've been doing behind the scenes.
So the analogy then that you guys are in the permit process.
We're
That-
kind of, yeah. We've
that
been
you see
We're getting ready to
nothing,
break
you
ground.
spend a lot
we're
of time
ready
and
to
money.
break ground. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, okay.
So with that's our presentation. Very short and sweet, but as Trent said, we hope to come back at a more in-depth board study session with you in the next weeks to come, just to disseminate some of the data that we've found and work through some of the ideas and gather input from you as a board.
Well, I'd just like to say we hired a band and had some food vendors and stuff come out in your honor. So tonight, when you're done, if you want to go enjoy the community out there. So.
The warmest welcome we've ever had.
I know.
Well, thanks for the presentation and for coming out here to see us in person. We appreciate it. I'm excited. Let's see what we see in the next few weeks.
Anybody else? Just a couple things. One is you made a couple comments. One about the process, not the product. I'm kind of more interested in the product. Just throwing that out there. I noticed on your graph of all the different places that you've worked around, a few that sparked a little thought in my mind. One, the Cotati Rona Park. So you're familiar with that nice big old megatropolis that we're going to build here in Windsor. Just want to let you know that that's going to happen someday. We're probably only 6 numbers away from getting that done, but we'll pick them and it's going to come up right. The clay on the wheel, great analogy. You got to get your hands wet though if you want to mold it, right? So to get wet, we got to dive into something. So I noticed that you worked at San Ramon where they have the aquatic center there too. So there's another little thing that, product, not process, that we're working with the town. So I just wanted to kind of throw those out there so that way you knew that at least one of us, I know all of us as a group, but just there's a lot of interest in those things as well. So
Absolutely. And we will leave you with the product. There will be binders, but we really gear towards making a living document. That's something that grows with you. And I think to your words, there's a level of accountability to us to make sure that we give you the direction that you guys are going to need moving forward.
So you didn't know I knew what you meant when you said the clay on the wheel, did you?
No,
It was the last class I had to take so I could graduate from college.
There you go.
So,
I had a question. I saw in your slide that you will also be collecting community input
Mhm.
and that you also use an inquiry-based process.
Mhm.
And I was wondering if you were planning on getting community input in Spanish.
We can provide that if that's something that you're interested in. You know,
Absolutely.
the majority of my staff actually, we have a significant offering in San Diego, all bilingual. 30% of them commute from Tijuana daily, so we can definitely work to do that if that's something you'd like us to execute, and we can work that into our procedures for sure.
So I just want to mention that Latinos are a really important segment of this community, so it is important to me.
Absolutely. We're here to provide the services you need, so just let us know those things and we'll make sure it happens.
Thank you.
Rich, I just wanted to let you know. So these guys did meet with the town. You guys spent quite a while with them, just talking about what's going on with the town, how it interrelates with what we're trying to do, and so I just wanted you to know that we have gone that route already too.
I know, and I love all our counterparts over at the town and the different staffs and stuff. And, you know, I'm speaking more as just a plain old dude that's lived here for a long time that wants to see a few things get done before I die. And so anyhow, the
We're
center.
ready to help.
There you go.
Okay, we're ready.
We'll frame your vision for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No.
Absolutely.
Anyhow, thanks an awful lot. It's really nice to put faces to the product and the warrants that we keep signing each month. So it's also awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
For having us.
All right, moving on to 5.2, the annual update of the Windsor Unified School District English Learner Advisory Committee. This is going to be presented by Allison.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Allison Griggs, Student Services Coordinator with the district. So I've gotten to present to you in previous years. This will be the same annual update. We're going to look at our District English Learner Advisory Committee meetings. Those are meetings with our parents of multilingual students. And then we'll also look at the programs and services that we provide to our students.
going? Yeah. So this year we were able to have multiple meetings to incorporate parent involvement and inform them of what our schools can offer for their students and what we do offer. We have those district meetings I mentioned, and then we also have site-based meetings. And so that's going to be a little bit more focused on SIPSA, principal goals, and what happens to support our English learners at each school site specifically. There are required topics that we have that are addressed in that top section there. And then we ask parents for their input, what they feel is needed, and areas of interest. And so you can see their graduation requirements are always one of the top areas of interest. A through G requirements, financial aid, and then college and career is always a top area. So this year we again had a presenter from Sonoma State that Trustee Lopez was able to help us coordinate with. And then Santa Rosa, excuse me, Santa Rosa Junior College. And this year, one thing that was new is we always have our high school students and principal introduce and kind of help transition our middle school students at both Cali and Windsor Middle. And this year, we also brought in Forrest Harper from North Bay Med Academy and had him share a little bit more about big picture learning and the alternative program that students could be involved in at North Bay Med. In addition, we always inform our parents of what ELD services are offered at each school site. We do offer, we're required to offer, both designated and integrated support for all of our multilingual students. And that's going to be the protected time to focus on language development and the California ELD standards. And then also the integrated support that students are getting all day long with all of their teachers in all areas of curriculum. Through that instructional time, especially in the designated ELD portion, we have our own internal monitoring system, and so that's going to be the benchmark assessments that we use. Those are administered each semester for secondary and trimester for elementary. When we look at that data, we are looking for how students are performing on those ELD standards. And we are also following not only the standards, but the California ELD roadmap and making sure that our teacher input is incorporated as well. So teachers actually got to help build these assessments and help us align. So this year, our students scored at least 30.3% of our multilingual students were able to score 80% or higher at the end of this year. So that was this spring on that final benchmark they took. We track this to see how our students are doing annually. And then we can also reflect on data from the first benchmark in the fall to this last benchmark in the spring. And so we look at the 80% mark because that's when we consider students to be proficient enough in the language that they may not need extra language support going farther in any of their content area classes. So this is frequently students that we're looking at reclassifying based on how they score in the assessment that we'll look at next. So we break that out by school site, and then you can also see the 30.3 is how we do as a district currently. So the assessment that I mentioned that we do annually is going to be the state LPAC, English Learner Proficiency Assessment of California. And students take that every year, the summative assessment that gives us scores so that we can determine if they're ready to reclassify as fluent English proficient. But they also would have taken that when they first enrolled with us, if deemed necessary by their home language survey. And so there's two different forms of that test. And then we'll also be looking at a third in just a moment. So as I mentioned, this is the assessment that students take every year. We've dealt with a lot of transitions over the past few years. We finally have the full transition from CELT to LPAC this year, which means that it is completely computer-based, no more paper pencil. And then we also have an alternate version for our students with special education services that may need a modified version of the assessment. So based on administering that assessment and getting student data back, we were able to reclassify 62 of our students this year. This is based on the assessment that students took last spring. We didn't get that data back until this fall. So then once we received that data in the fall, we were able to reclassify these students as fluent English proficient, meaning they no longer needed that ELD instruction. And they will still be monitored for 4 years. And we'll still see how they're doing in their classes and check progress, but they no longer are required to have designated pull-out time for that instruction.
So these students basically had to do reclassification during COVID on
Learning.
online learnings, things like that. So much more difficult situation. That I know that number is lower than we usually have. So that's probably a good indicator as to why.
Absolutely. And so in 2021, you can see that number in parentheses. We only had 25 students able to reclassify. That was also largely because when we went out on distance learning, we hadn't finished all of those spring summative LPAC tests yet. So not all of our students were able to test, which was a problem across the state.
Do we have enough staffing and resources to kind of catch up and make sure we're getting all those students reclassified that may qualify this coming year?
That was definitely a challenge this year. We always need more help testing, but I do think this year was especially hard because we couldn't get subs.
Right.
So when we had people that could be trained to test, we didn't have subs that could cover their classes.
So that might be something I'd like the administration to look at to see if we could support that a little stronger maybe.
Yeah, and we were able to get many more students tested this year than we were the year prior. But that requirement the year prior was also lifted by the state because they knew no one was going to get it done. So as you see, 62 students that were reclassified based on the 2020-2021 school year data. And we are actually already getting the data in for this year now. So I think it's the process has gotten a little bit quicker. Now that-
Allison, what's the asterisk next to the middle school for? I forgot.
Oh, thank you. So that asterisk you see by the middle school numbers with 22 students, we're going to look at on the next slide as well. But those are students, over half of those did reclassify what we would consider the traditional way, meaning they scored a 4 on the LPAC, they did well enough in their classes and on their assessments, and then based on teacher and parent input. The asterisk is noting that some of our students that have IEPs, students with disabilities that qualify for special education, may reclassify through their IEP based on what the IEP team deems is appropriate for the student's learning. So that happened this year at the middle school. We had a handful of students that reclassified through their IEP, not what we would consider the traditional way based on the scores. So you'll see that asterisk on this current slide as well.
So is that something similar to like a certificate of completion versus a diploma?
It's typically going to be our certificate of completion students. So you'll see that asterisk on the middle school and the high school for last year, and then for this year, still on the middle school. And that's typically the time when we look at students needing to be exited through their IEP, as opposed to reclassifying if they've been in ELD for multiple years and we're not seeing the benefit any longer, based on learning need. So this slide is a little different than it's been in previous years, and that's because the state hasn't been able to update their information yet. So typically we look at how we're doing as a district, and then we compare that to the state and county numbers. The state and county hasn't been able to collect or share that yet. I think they've collected it, but haven't been able to report on it. So we estimated for the 2021-2022 data that you see in blue in the last column there, but we'll have to wait to get certified data from a reporting system as soon as that comes out. And then the other thing that's important to note on this is this data, because it goes through the process of being submitted, certified, and then reported on, does take longer. So this is all old data by the time that you see it. So when you see 2021 data, that's really the previous year. 21-22 data is really based on the year prior. So when you see the 3.8% for the district for our reclassification rate, that's actually based on those 25 students that we talked about from last year. And so last year is also the year that we didn't complete all of our assessments and weren't able to reclassify as many students because we hadn't done all those assessments. So we'll have to see, based on this year's data, we can add that next column soon, but it would be based on these numbers that you see. We'll just have to wait for that to be certified. So that's all I have for you this evening. You have any questions?
I was just wondering if it was the same speaker this year as last year. And
For
that is-
Sonoma State.
Yeah,
yes.
Dr. Malpica? Is it Dr. Malpica?
Malpica, and then he brought someone else with him, but it wasn't someone that I had met before. And then we had one from Santa Rosa Junior College.
Oh, okay, interesting. Good to know.
I want to thank you. I don't remember the format of this presentation, if that's how we saw it last year, but I really liked it with the English and the Spanish kind of,
good.
instead of having two separate ones, having it like this section, English and Spanish, and the next down. I liked it, and I would encourage you, if you're the one who put it together or how it was put together, to continue to do that. I for whatever reason, I don't know how to explain it, but it just it seemed it was good.
Thank you.
So-
In previous years, we've tried to have a parent or student come present with us as well, so that we could also have the presentation in Spanish. It just didn't work out this year.
Got it.
I also have a question, but it's more of a question for Jeremy. And that is, do we keep data on families that are bilingual or they speak two languages in the home, but they're not necessarily a part of this group? They're not necessarily a part of a group that would need to. Okay.
So that would be more like the corresponding language usually, like how we connect with families
Yes.
and send them messaging. So we do have that information as well.
Okay.
This particular committee is focused on parents that would need that support because their student
Right.
is a
Right.
multilingual learner. But yes, we have that for school sites too.
Right. Okay, that's fantastic because I'm thinking about multi-tier systems of support and connecting those families. So can we talk about that later? Great. Great.
One other quick request, Allison, you have interchangeably used the term English learner and multilingual learner during this presentation. So for the benefit of those watching and perhaps the board, can you explain why you're doing that?
Yeah, I think we talked about this last year too. We're trying to make sure that we have an asset-based approach to how we address our students that we work with, regardless of what that area may be. And so in this case in particular, there's less of a focus on the student learning English and more of a focus on them developing as a bilingual learner if they have a first language, home language other than English.
I love that because that was the reason why I asked that question, because I'm wondering how we can incentivize our students to really understand the value of being bilingual, especially for the future, for their future when they become professionals, that they understand that that is truly a skill that, you know, should be honored.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I had a brief comment. Just appreciate all of the conversation that's happened so far and appreciated your presentation. Love the focus on the data. I was just wondering, curious on this page, your thoughts on the 0 reclassifications at Brooks and Cali. Did that have to do with just them as a site not completing testing?
Yeah, so that was the year that we first went out on distance learning because all this data is old.
Right.
And so when we went out, not all sites had even begun their testing yet.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, and then I know you said that some of the data is coming in. Are you able to comment on what you're seeing? Any trends?
It should be based on what we saw this year for students that reclassified. So it'll definitely be more students than we saw last year. Or are you referencing the data that's coming in still now?
The data, any of the data that's
Yeah.
coming in.
So this will be reflected in the report that'll be coming out hopefully soon. It's usually out by now. And then we also have tests that we just did this spring that the state's been faster with getting our results back to us. I think now that we've gotten LPAC a few years under our belt. And so that data that we're seeing come in, we already have quite a few students that will be able to reclassify based on that. I mean, for example, Maddie Washburn has at least 8 already, which for that TK2 group is not super common. We haven't had that many in my experience in this position. So
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
All good. Thank you.
Wonderful presentation. Thank you.
If you don't mind, because I got to get in the habit of doing this. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to come speak? Nope. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Allison. No, I'm supposed to do that, even if we're limited. So it's a habit I'm trying to, a good habit. Yeah. All righty. Moving on to item number 5.3, notice of public hearing for review of the Windsor Unified School District 2021-2024 Local Control Accountability Plan. This item will be presented by Lisa Saxton, who we're going to be hearing a lot from tonight.
So I'll try to keep it short and sweet. Actually, I have an idea for these. So this is just opening the public hearing, Rich. So my suggestion is to couple 5.3 and 5.5 together, open the public hearing, wait, a minute or so to give it its due diligence, and then close the public hearing. And then we can move on to 5.4. What do you think?
So do I have to read each one individually or both? I think legally you're supposed to do each one at a time, right?
You could do it either way, but.
But since you've only said so far 5.3, if you're in agreement, then you should save what 5.5 is also and open the public hearing for both and restate.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to open to the public, section 5.3 and 5.5, the notice of public hearing for the Local Control Accountability Plan Act. And I'm going to leave that open for about 30, 45 seconds or something like that.
As long as it's reflected in the minutes that you left it open for at least a minute.
Okay, I'm leaving it open for 1 minute. Yeah, everybody, I will hold the microphone.
Let's wave our things.
Oh yeah, man, this stuff is, whew.
You should throw them to Sullivan, and as you depart, they said, we'll throw them like the Romans.
I just have to say, when you guys say that I talk a lot, and a minute's a long time when it's quiet. It's really hurting me. That really good quality, the quality time is disappearing. I could have told a joke right now or something. I'd probably get in trouble. All righty. Seeing that it's been open for a minute or more and no one has wanted to comment, I will now close the public comment, the public hearing. Thank you, Eric. On section 5.3 and 5.5, and I will return it back to us. And now we will go to 5.4, the notice of public hearing for the review of the budget and the reserve transparency disclosure of Windsor Unified School District. This will be presented by Austin, and I think I need to open it up for another minute. Okay, and I am now opening 5.4 up. Okay, I'm going to come up next year. Well, I won't be doing this next year. Yeah. Actually, I just wanted to, while we're waiting, if you can see it, my friend Eric, he was going through some personal items at home. His mom was one of the big wrestling supporters of Hillsburg High School back when there was, I think, 2 years where they won something. And I'm sorry, Eric. It was before Windsor was a school. It's okay. Anyhow, and he had this little button here that says, I love wrestling. And Eric knows how much I love wrestling. And Eric did too, and so did his mom. And anyhow, he gave me this earlier, and I'm going to keep it. And
wear that to a dual meet next year.
You know what?
About my mom.
I do. That was, I have to say, Eric, for some of you who don't know, Eric's mom passed recently. And being that I coached for so long, I just got to tell you, of all the different sports moms that are out there, that help. For whatever reason, wrestling moms just happen to be they just have everything that all the other moms have, and then just a little bit more. I don't know why. I think it's because they want them to all be fair. So anyhow, so Erica, I didn't get a chance to meet your mom, but the fact that she was a wrestling mom tells me a lot about her. And sorry that she's not with us anymore. And with that, I'd like to close our section 5.4, the notice of public hearing for the review of the budget. And now we're going to move on to 5.6, proposed board policy 6120, responsive instruction and intervention. The first reading, this will be presented by Lisa Saxon.
So hopefully you've had a chance to review the current board policy and the proposed board policy as created by what we call ourselves NOSOCO, the North Sonoma County Consortium for MTSS, which includes Windsor, Healdsburg, Piner Olivet, and Mark West. So the power in this new board policy and the proposed language is that it was written in collaboration with all 4 districts under the tutelage of Judy Elliott, who is the consultant with whom we are working on our MTSS rollout. The goal is that the consortium, over the course of its planning and implementation, will ultimately serve as a model for Sonoma County, because Sonoma County has yet to do that. And so if we can make a replicable board policy, implementation guides, et cetera, then the other 36 districts in Sonoma County can find a Northern Star to follow and implement on their own. So I encourage you to ask any questions and to ultimately approve it when we bring it back June 30th for the second and hopefully final reading.
So just for clarification, do we need to, this is just a reading at this point. We don't have to make a motion or anything, correct?
No, correct. It's just a reading. So it's a good time to ask questions if you have any.
I mean, I liked what I didn't like about it was that it didn't identify in the current board policy. We have a lot of things identified. And then but at the same time, what I liked about it was that it didn't have things necessarily identified. So that way you're able to not transition, but we can take care of the things that are really most pressing at the time without somebody come along and saying, hey, number 3 says X and you're not doing number 3, when it's really not a very prioritized issue. Anyhow, I like this is the new board policy is more of the spirit of what we're trying to do versus the checking off boxes. And I kind of like that, but.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. And you're right, it doesn't have a laundry list of items to check off to say you did or didn't do it. However, the primary focus of the policy emphasizes equity and ensuring that every student gets what they need when they need it in the areas of academic, social, emotional, and behavioral support. Yes.
Right.
So is this the first step for this group of districts? Kind of this is the policy, and then they'll continue working together with the consultant that you mentioned to refine how this will be implemented across school sites?
Correct. So it's one of many foundational steps that have been taken behind the scenes. We've been working together since March. So we've had clocked a lot of time together, but this was one of the major pieces to get in place because, as you can imagine, just for Windsor alone, it sends a really strong message about if you put something like that in your board policy about defining the priorities for your students in your district. But imagine 4 districts taking the exact same policy and having 4 boards approve that language, the messaging and the strength behind that.
It's good. The only thing that I would ask is that as these things are getting developed down the road with other districts as we collaborate, that we would include our board policy folks in that, so that, because this is a policy issue, and I think that the people that are on the policy board, the subcommittee, should be a little bit more involved in that process. I know we're just getting back to the normal things of doing stuff, but just keeping that in mind.
And I can speak to that. So I put it on here. We talked about how to go about doing this. And I thought we want to get this in place for the beginning of next year. This can be a major focus for professional development for us. So I thought this is in a lot of ways planting our flag and saying all means all, every kid matters. And so if we would have delayed, we would have started the year without this policy in place potentially. So that was why it came before you, before it went before the subcommittee.
I've heard that Wright School District may adopt this very soon.
I was wondering how the consultant for this was selected.
Jeremy and I started doing some research late last spring, early summer, and took a look at some various opportunities, talked to the County Office of Ed, talked to SELPA, and ultimately Judy Elliott was the vendor, the consultant we chose to go with. And I should also say Brian Gaunt, they work together. So Judy is the person who is working with the district leadership team folks and getting things moving forward. And then Brian Gaunt takes it from there and works with the school-based leadership team. So this is a multi-approach, and there's also a data team that he will be working with. So it's multiple groups of people all getting on board to get this work underway.
Great.
And Judy was the chief academic officer for LA Unified. And then she went out and on her own to start consulting. So LA Unified was one of the first implementers of MTSS, formerly kind of RTI. She just came highly recommended.
One of her taglines is that we will bake this process into the DNA of the district.
Is there
Well, Rich loves baking.
I- I-
Baked goods. So
I do.
I see good things happening here.
And just for clarification, some things don't even have to be completely baked to go ahead and be.
That's true. You graham cracker crusts.
Cookie
you
dough,
know.
half baked too. Yes. Well, speaking of baking, is there anybody that would like to comment on this before we
Look
go
at that.
forward?
You're
on
so
this?
well trained now.
Huh? I know. Bill, you're proud of me, huh?
You're on the expedited meeting. So
I am.
Thank you, Lisa. I look forward to seeing this again on the 30th for implementation.
Thanks, Lisa. All righty, we're going to move to 6.1. I just would like to make a real quick comment. If you stay with our district for a long time and then you leave us for a job somewhere else, the last meeting or two that we have, we're going to just load our docket with all sorts of things so we can hear from you so much that, so Pete, just know that if you ever decide to leave, the last 2 weeks before you go, they're going to have like 20 items that you'll have to speak to. With that said, Lisa, would you like to come up and address the board on 6.1, a public hearing for the LCAP?
Was that a backhanded compliment?
No, that was an absolute right down the middle like a bowling strike.
All right. Okay. So LCAP time, my final LCAP for Windsor Unified. Imagine that. And rather than bore you blow by blow with the 100 plus page document, as it were, that is definitely in there for your review, I've done a condensed version of the big ticket items, if you will, and how it fell out over the course of the school year. So the composite information based on data analysis over the course of this year with the LCAP Core Committee, the district leadership team, the District English Learner Advisory Committee, and you all got the following results for us. So, current successes, social emotional learning, our graduation rate remains high with our high school students. Our EL reclassification rate, as Allison shared a moment ago. On the dashboard, even though it's been a while and the dashboard fell apart when the pandemic began and we are going to have to rebuild it together over the next few years, I just want to remind you where we left off, and that is that in 2019, students with disabilities, English learners, and Hispanic Latino students exited differentiated assistance that year off of the dashboard. And that's a big deal. Doesn't mean that we say check the box and we're good and don't need to worry about those significant subgroups anymore, but not having them in differentiated assistance is a huge success for everyone involved who is working with those specific subgroups. Homeless students are the only subgroup who remained at that time in differentiated assistance. We improved our family response rate on the Youth Truth Survey this year, 5% from 38% last year to 43% this year. We also, as I shared with you in April, learned that we didn't quite get the backslide that we thought we might have gotten with the distance learning, and that is basing our comparative results on iReady from pre-pandemic to the ones we just administered this year in person. We were able to pull off 25 out of 31 of our LCAP actions this year, despite the ever-changing landscape with COVID protocols and the attention that was focused there. Pete doesn't know anything about that. All right, so then we take a look at our needs. So I mentioned homeless students from differentiated assistance in 2019. We obviously need to continue a focus on social emotional well-being for our students. We want to continue to chip away at the CCI indicator, and that is all of the various ways, and there are many and even more now, that students can graduate prepared. And just as a reminder, if you graduate with a Windsor High School diploma, and just do that, not as if that's something bad, it's something good, but if you just do that, just to give you a basis of comparison, you would not be prepared on the CCI indicator. So you have to do additional things besides just earn a high school diploma in order to be deemed prepared for college and career readiness. And that's our new challenge. So new focus as well. And also paying attention, of course, to our subgroups. We'll look to see how we do fare in the SBAC world this year and continue to chug along in English language arts, math, and science. And EL progress Allison covered in our last presentation. Students with disabilities, specifically, we will pay attention to with regard to their academic achievement, reduced suspension rates, graduation rates, CCI rates, and decreased absenteeism. That was a noted area of need for that particular subgroup of students. Connected to social emotional learning, we'll continue to focus on positive adult-student relationships. You'll recall that the data from Youth Truth was a little troubling, but we couldn't necessarily call it troubling because it was a new survey and not completely comparable to last year. So we need another year of data to see how that will look. Nonetheless, we've identified it as an area of need over the years, so we will continue regardless of what the data tells us, because we know it's important and we know it helps the connection for students to our schools. Focus specifically on third graders meeting or exceeding language arts standards. Integrated Math 1 at the end of the semester, taking a look at who is scoring proficient on that benchmark assessment. MTSS, which we just talked about. The survey around the parent perception that schools are safe and violence-free, again, needing another year of data because the survey question was different than what we've asked before, and we also went through COVID this year with, on campuses, so that could have played in. Communication around social media and the various platforms and ways in which Heather pushes out information for us, and the last one, engagement and motivation strategies for students. So when we analyzed all of the data that we walked through this year, we had a limited dashboard, the survey data, needs assessments, the iReady data, et cetera. The items, the bulleted items that you see in front of you were the items that floated to the top as areas for further consideration, focus, and work. In no particular order, that's just the ones that came out through the course of the year and unpacking the data. When we asked all of those groups that I talked about at the beginning, so the board, the DLAC, the LCAP core committee, and the district leadership team, each person was asked to rank all of those items if they were in charge of allocating all the resources, and it was their sole decision what would be the first thing on the list, the second thing on the list, on down to number 8. All of those responses were compiled and then calculated, and the order in which you see them is the order of that composite ranking.
So if you could remind us, or maybe it's different now, to your 25 or so people on the core committee, and then you gave it to us to do rankings, and other groups may have done rankings, DLAC and such. Were those all just equally weighted? Our vote counts the same as a parent at DLAC or somebody on the core committee? How does that work?
This year, I put it all in one and just gave you one composite ranking. And that's simply because in two of the areas, the response rates were so small that it would have potentially identified people. And so I left them all as one this year. So they're equal, is the answer to your question. So last year, when we did this process, the top 6 that floated up is what you see in front of you. So best first instruction in math and language arts, academic intervention, especially in math, social emotional learning, A through G, especially with English learners, student relationships with adults, and parent education. And this is how it looks this year. So number 1, MTSS, 2, student relationships with adults. So that moved up a bit. 3, student motivation and engagement. 4, recruiting and retaining employees who more closely reflect student demographics. 5, high school student understanding of college career readiness. So not just getting more students prepared, but actually helping students understand what they need to do in order to be prepared. Education around that. And that's based on survey data as well. And then again, the parent perception regarding safe and violence-free schools.
I have a question about number 6, the parent perception regarding safe and violence-free schools. I just thought it was worded a little bit interesting because when I think about school safety, to me, it doesn't matter what people's perception is. It matters whether school is safe. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are on, because I know that didn't come from us. It came from, I think, the Youth Truth Survey.
It did.
Are we looking at that a little bit more holistically than just parent? I assume we are, but then just parent. So I just want to clarify that for the many people that I'm sure are watching, that we're looking at it from a true safety standpoint, not just the perception of safety.
Correct. Yes. And to your point, it's all about perception, right? So even if the perception is there that perhaps there are some areas that don't feel safe, then our job is to run through our safety protocols and make sure that we're making sure that they're solidly in place, and B, maybe doing a better job of communicating what they are so people know.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a major focus next year. And I already talked to Director Sullivan about what we're going to be doing with regards to our safety plans. My parent advisory committee is going to be focused on school safety. So I understand what you're getting at, but we're also going to be doing a deep dive into our practices to make sure that they are the best and hopefully improve the parent perception and also improve our safety.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and one thing that I will say, because I've looked at these before, I actually did vote on them as a member of Site Council, is that a lot of this comes from, there was that period at the very beginning of the school year where there was some incidents at the high school. And I think the reason we're highlighting parent perception as kind of the thing that we need to look at is that students feel that the school is safe. And I personally believe it is safe. So that's not something that I think we need to focus on as much, as that parents don't necessarily see that, don't necessarily feel that it's as safe because they've seen these things at the beginning of the school year that honestly kind of reflected poorly, but in reality aren't a great reflection of the school as a whole. So I think that the reason that we say that we want to improve parent perception is that parent perception doesn't actually reflect how safe our schools are at the moment.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's a really good point. To add on to that, it made me think about some of the social media posts that circulated at the beginning of the year. So it's almost even bigger than parent perception, also community perception, and going back to the communications piece you talked about. So glad you're on that.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's making me think about, Jackson, to build upon what you are talking about, in one of our LCAP core committees, a parent pointed out, and it was sort of an aha moment for me, that due to the COVID protocols all year at that time, and this was February-ish, maybe February, March, somewhere through in there, parents had not seen the inside of their kids' classrooms because the COVID protocols wouldn't allow them on campuses. So if you combine that with what you see on social media when things do happen, I can understand perhaps the feeling of unsettledness about that. Okay.
Yes, on number 5, I was wondering, is that across all 4 years of high school?
Yes.
Okay, and how does that, is there a difference between if you're a freshman, the amount of information that you get versus if you're a junior? Or how do kids get this information?
Ideally, we're trying to be even more proactive than that and really start. So, for example, you heard Allison talk earlier about topics around this being requested at DLAC meetings. And ironically, when we take roll and say, which schools are you all representing here? We get kindergarten parents too. They want to know early on, how do you navigate this whole thing? What do you need to do? And so there's a more diligent stance being taken to start at the middle school level, particularly targeting 8th graders, to say, look, here's what you need to be thinking about in terms of college career readiness when you start to set up your 4-year plan, which you'll do either in the spring or in summer of before you start your freshman year in high school. So we're trying to even go further down than 9th grade, lower, earlier. Okay, so this is something I've not done before, but I thought it might just be a nice little visual representation. So if I distill all of the LCAP actions and just say, here's the big title header for each of them in goal 1, and here's the dollar amount, and there could be multiple different things that dollar amount represents, but it gives you just a visual sense of where did the money go based on the priorities that were identified. So obviously, we've got lots in Goal 1 because Goal 1 encompasses all of Common Core implementation. And here we have Goal 2. I probably should have restated the goals up above to jog your memory. So Goal 2 is about student engagement. Goal 3 is safe working and learning environments for staff and for students, and how the resources fell out. And then finally, Goal 4, and this is about parent and family partnerships and community engagement. So you'll notice there are 2 discontinues. So we will be discontinuing Blooms as a communication platform for teachers and replacing it with a platform called Parent Square that connects to Aries, which is our current student information system. And then down below, Apogee is the district and site admin communication system that's used to push notifications, text messages, phone calls, etc. That will also discontinue, but it will fade. So that's why you see a dollar amount still there, because we will need to pay Apogee a prorated portion, and we're still sort of figuring the details of that out, because we can't just simply say we won't have anything until we figure out what we're going to do next and get Parent Square up and running. So there needs to be a little bit of a crossover there. So that's why you see some dollars still allocated to Apogee.
I was pleased to see the Parent Square because I've used that, and it's much easier for a teacher to send messages home through Aries communication and things like that, and announcements and, good things and bad things that are shared with families can all go out very simply. It translates for you. It does all kinds of amazing things that you can just make it work without flaw hardly. So it's a good program.
It's great. And we're very much looking forward to less confusion for families and not having 2 different platforms or more that they're having to pay attention to with information coming from different areas. So looking forward to streamlining that as well. I heard the Wright School District uses it too.
I have a really basic question. I can't remember. What year are we in the 3-year LCAP cycle?
This is year 2.
Okay. Year 2 is coming up.
Year 2 is 21, 22. Yes. So we're doing 22, 23 that we just did all this for is year 2.
Got it.
Sorry, I should have clarified.
Thank
better. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I better go get the next PowerPoint ready.
righty, thank you. Is there any public comment that anyone would like to make on 6.1? Okay. Moving on to 6.2, public hearing.
To motion and approve.
Yeah, you're right. Excellent, Eric. I was trying to move on. Malinelli was making me go. Can we have a motion for 6.1 to approve the hearing on the LCAP?
I'll make motion.
All righty, and can we have a second?
A second.
All righty, can we have a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Attaboy. All righty, so 5-0 plus 1. All right, now moving on to 6.2, public hearing review of the 2022-23 adopted budget. This will be presented by Austin.
All right. So, adopted budget. Let's dive in. Okay, so this was an interesting year. We talked about it a few months ago right before the May revision. That second interim was right after the governor's proposal in January, but then he still had to come out one more time in May and give his revised numbers. And we had talked about how there was going to be a huge surplus. And so what that does to the budget is it makes it almost like a camel in a way, because you got $16.8 billion in one-time money. And so that's about 15% of what we get for education. So you're going to get 15% in one-time money. So it's going to make it look, if you look at last year's, it's going to be flat. Then you're going to look at this year, it's going to be a big up in the air. We're going to have a big excess. And then it's going to come back down in the out years because you don't know if you're going to get one-time monies yet for next year because the governor hasn't come out yet. So it makes the budget look funky. But that is because of the one-time money. And it's actually so unbelievable. It's never happened before. When you get 4 economic indicators, I don't know all 4 of them off the top of my head, but at the state level, if you have 4 economic indicators that hit, and this is the first time in history since this bill was enacted, Bill 751, then you have to institute a 10% reserve cap. So the chart below shows the average school district in the state of California. So you have unified, elementary, and high school districts. The only districts that are exempt from this law are small districts under 2,500, like Wright, or basic A districts, or basic A districts. And so we're neither of those. So we're not exempt. And so if you look at the average school district, unified, elementary, and high school districts in 2021 was about 22, 26, and 21%. We are right in line with unified school districts. We're about 1% off. So we are perfectly in line for the average fund balance of a school district of unified size. So I'm not going to read all of this, but this is what was included in the governor's May revision. But what's tough about this is none of it, and when you're talking about this high of a dollar amount, none of it is for certain. And I'll explain a little bit more. So if you look at the third bullet point down, you have $8 billion in the discretionary block grant. Well, what happens is the governor comes out in May, he gives his proposal, and then behind closed doors, the Assembly, the Senate, and the governor come together and they basically argue. They enter extreme negotiations, they bicker back and forth. They each have their own proposals. And so last year, the governor and one of the houses, I can't remember which house, basically agreed on everything and got their way. This year, it's actually very interesting because the Assembly and the Senate are agreeing against the governor. So it's going to make things interesting. And this is a perfect example. So that $8 billion discretionary grant, the governor wants it to be fully discretionary, wants it to go and you have any choice you want in how you use it. The Assembly and the Senate are both disagreeing and they want it to go to salaries, benefits, post-employment benefits, or pension cost. So we, as a school district, in my opinion, I'm going to adopt the stronger language. The governor had softer language, but that could change. So currently, this is in the budget, just like everything else that we have in the budget. So any questions on any of that? Cool. Go ahead, Rich.
Actually, I have a quick one on the COLA.
Definitely.
So that takes everything up, right?
Correct.
Now, is that one-time money or is that the new benchmark and it continues from there?
good question. It's ongoing. So it's
It
a new
is ongoing.
benchmark, and then next year we'll be on top of it. Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of times when we give raises, right, we look at that cost of living adjustment. And so, that's why we as a team felt like it was best to give the difference this year because the governor came out and gave a higher COLA.
Well, to that point, though, and that was the thing that I was going to ask later was, the disclosure that we made that we want to pass that on to staff, right?
Yes, sir.
The question was, are we passing it on in the form of one-time money, or are we passing it on the form of
Ongoing.
Ongoing.
Yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to clarify that it is ongoing because it is part of the COLA, right? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good clarification. Thanks, Rich.
Also had a question
Yes, Melanie.
on universal meals.
Yes.
I cannot read the acronym that's at the end. It's a little bit fuzzy from over
All
here.
right. It's FRPM. So it's free reduced price meals.
Oh, I see.
And how we get to that. So like if a student is low income, foster youth, or an English learner, they get free meals because of their status as a student. But the state has gone ahead and funded universal meals for next year for all students. And so no matter what, you get 2 free meals next year as a student, which is awesome.
So 2 free meals means breakfast and lunch?
Correct. And on top of that, we're actually going to go a step ahead and we're going to offer dinner for our before and after school program. They call it supper, which I think is funny. But so we're going to do the 2 free meals, breakfast, lunch, and then supper as if we're in the 50s. So
when they say 2 free meals, is that all inclusive? Meaning it's the personnel, the food, the whole 9 yards?
So sort of. So the way we get funded for meals is we get a reimbursement. So like, let's say Rich.
You're going to get a lot.
I'm going to go with Stephanie. Stephanie, let's say you get a meal. The governor, not the governor, the federal government actually gives us a reimbursement of $3 and last I checked, it was $3.38.
That's a fry.
Yeah, nowadays, you're right. So they give us that reimbursement, and then it's on us to make sure that that food service budget is in line. So that makes sense. So they just give us, and that's.
So it's when they say it's free, but it's really, we get certain amount of funding.
Correct.
To stretch it all out.
You're right.
So it's just like our home
We can't give, gourmet steaks and get funded
Yeah, I
back on it.
actually had a question about that. Do you
Yeah.
feel that from what you've seen, do you feel that it's properly reimbursed to
Ooh.
provide kind of the level of food service and nutrition that we would want to?
You know what's really funny about that? I haven't even had this conversation with Jeremy yet, but I was with one of my mentors that I look up to, and he looked at me and said, "Don't you think that that's enough money to fund all this?" And I thought that was interesting because he's called a lot of things. And so in the back of my head, I have that going on of, I don't know if they gave us enough money, but I also don't think it's funded fully. So in my personal opinion, I think that they should fund it higher, and I think that they need to fund it higher based off a geographical area. So like we get the same reimbursement amount right now as like Oklahoma. I can almost promise you our food costs are higher here. So it is a good question because it is federal. So therefore there's no cost associated with where you are.
One piece of that too is that that's based on our ADA. And at the high school, some students aren't going to come and take the lunch.
Correct.
So it gets ebbs and flows, I guess you could say, as far
Correct.
as the amount of food they need to order. They have to plan for a lot on a rainy day maybe.
Right.
But other times kids are making their own lunches or going to a friend's house or whatever they're able to
Right.
do.
Right.
So for clarification, so we have X number of students in the school district,
Mhm.
and they're going to give us a certain amount of funds per student.
Correct.
We get that funds, and then to Eric's point, if 20% of the kids don't partake of the breakfast, some of them don't take care of the lunch because they want other things or whatever. So our budget or what we are actually spending could be less than every kid getting something.
Correct.
So it's not.
No, you're spot on.
Well, is
Because
that
currently
right?
how it is we only get the reimbursement if those students qualify. Going
Got
back
it.
to Molinari's question about what that FRPM was. So if those students qualify, you would get that funding. But if the students didn't qualify, then you had to pay for it, right? So like Jeremy, if he has to go get lunch, I'm charging him. But,
And you should.
And yeah, not myself. My food service director likes me, so
You get the leftovers.
that's right. But anyway, does that answer the questions kind of, or did I
I
miss any?
think just to like close the loop on that, it's something that I'm interested in. I don't know if the rest of the board is interested in, and kind of where our food comes from that we serve to our students, what the cost is, how much we're required to prepare. I don't know if, I know we have
I was
many
just going
other.
to ask the same exact thing as you.
Yeah, I know we have many, many other priorities, but I do know how much kids like food. And I think if the board were inclined to spend some time on that in the future, I think it would be interesting to look into it and what our options are.
I mean, why don't we'll do a presentation for you so we can schedule
I'd like to make it sooner rather than later because my daughter, according to her, it's pizza almost every day. So
It's what?
pizza almost every day,
Sweet. I'm going back to school.
but not good pizza, like frozen pizza.
Okay, we'll get it on a future agenda so we can kind of discuss how all this works.
Jeremy, I just throw this out to you because you're pretty creative and think big. Now that every school district, this applies to every school district.
Yes.
You may want to get with, just like we did earlier with the 4 districts in our board policy, you may want to get together with as superintendents. You guys may want to see about putting together a buying group because for food and what have you, try those costs down with the volume and the ability to purchase, the power of purchasing. I think that with things coming up, I think that we're going to need to look at every possibility to have whatever scale of economies that we can.
Okay.
And I think you're well suited for figuring out how to.
All right.
We're actually in one.
We are?
Yeah, Sonoma County has they call it a co-op. And so every district in Sonoma County is part of this co-op, and they buy food and they put out their bids. It's a really intense process. I was just explaining it today to someone. You put out the bids and then you get the food based off these bids that you get. And a lot of times the bids are based off of supply. So then your menus are kind of set based off of what foods they have in stock, but they're shipped and then they're dispersed based off how many you ordered within the co-op. So it's the exact model kind of that you were talking about. Nice.
Right on. See, I'm not off.
And a lot of it comes from government supplies too.
Yes, that's a great point as well.
So we're overpaying for some things.
That actually gets, I shouldn't go into this, but I'm going to. You're going to find it interesting. The federal government gives like brown box items, which is basically like free produce. So you can get free items. What makes it difficult as a district is you're kind of playing the game of, do we get meat that can be frozen and there's no waste, or do you get produce, which is more expensive for us to buy, even though there's 50% waste? So then you're kind of playing that game of, even though it's more cost effective for us to get the produce. Anyway, there's a lot that goes into it. Yeah, well, me too, but anyway. Okay, on to the next. So assumptions. So these were the main assumptions used in creating this year's budget. A 6.56 COLA, 5.38, 4 on the way out. The biggest areas that I want to highlight after that are enrollment projections. So you see this year we were at 4,592. So we only had a decrease of 8 students, which is not on track with previous years. The reason why, though, is because of the implementation of TK. So because we have TK coming in next year, based off of what we already have enrolled, those students are now included for the ADA. Part of them, there's half of them that are not because they're not of age, and then we're going to jump out in front and eat the cost. Now, going into on your way down to California CPI, Consumer Price Index, I'd kind of talked about that the last couple board meetings to watch out for it because it's just going to slowly creep up. So now it's up to 6.1%. Previously, it was down in the low 5s, and it just keeps rising. There for a couple months, I believe it was February and March, California's was over 8%. So that's the cost of goods and services going up. And that usually you don't have to ever worry about it in budgeting, but this year you do because of inflation. So that's in there as well. And then our pension cost, we had a big jump going into next year from this year, but then they're going to steady out in the out years, which is always good. All right, so going to the multi-year, we had talked about the Camelback a little bit, and you see that in this slide. So 22, 23, you see the large excess, and that's because of the 15% in one-time monies that the governor gave us. So you can see that, and then we'll talk about it on the next slide, but a lot of that money is restricted money because of the fact that it is one-time in nature. So I'm not going to read the numbers to you, but you can kind of see where our beginning fund balance is and ending fund balance. And then 23-24, you can see a slight decrease. You can see the revenues drop off from the one-time funding. And 24-25 looks very similar.
Shouldn't 24-25 have a lot more one-time money in it? That's going to be another election year.
We don't know yet. Hopefully it does. But that's in 2 years. So we won't know till the January of 23-24. So 24 January, I'll
But
know.
it's an election year though, so it's probably going to be there.
Well, if I could read what's going to happen in California in 2 years, I'd have a job that pays a lot more money, Rich.
Not much more.
Not much more, you're right. All right. All right, so this is our fund balance. So 22-23, that's ending fund balance there. Reserve for economic uncertainties, assigned or restricted. So we talked about that 10%. So it does not include the assigned or restricted dollar amount. It just includes the unassigned amount. So we don't have anything in assigned, so it just includes the unassigned. So that 6.2 number is something that we ultimately as a group would need to commit certain funds to get down to about 5.6. Now it does include Fund 17, so there's an additional $700,000 there. But we did give out a dollar amount that's going to end up being about $400,000. So about $1 million we need to figure out tonight, what are some areas that we'd want to commit funds to for the long term. And it just needs to be in 22-23, and you can kind of see it decrease anyway in the out years. So just something to think about as we go look at Cali's budget. So looking at the Cali multi-year, Cali looks very stable. I was worried about them about 5-6 months ago when we were giving these raises. In the back of my head, I was thinking, man, how is this going to affect Cali? Because certain proposals weren't going to affect them as much because they are a charter school. So there are a lot of times where you get one-time dollars that Cali doesn't get a benefit from just because they are a charter. ESSER funds are a great example. We received about $10 million as a school district, but Cali didn't get any of it. So anywho, looking at 21-22 or 22, sorry, those are in the wrong years, 22-23, 23-24, 24-25. Not going to read off the numbers, but you can see Cali's budget is very stable, very stable. Okay, so questions or comments?
So question quickly on that
Yes,
last
sir.
slide with Cali.
Yeah.
So the 10% rule, is that a district-wide rule, or will Cali's budget be that 10% rule as well, differently from what the main budget would be?
Good question. Charter schools are exempt.
I wanted to make sure
Very
we
good
all heard
question,
that,
though.
yeah.
So we could become a charter and just become exempt. I'm just kidding.
No, we've talked about it.
Really?
Yeah, no, at the last meeting down in San Diego, actually, we went to a couple, well, I went to a few, and I think a couple other trustees went to them as well. And there's a lot of positives about becoming a charter as a whole district. There's a lot of unrest, not unrest, wrong word. Kind of like the old Christmas little snow globe. A lot of things still floating around as far as which direction the state's going to go on some of the questions. And so it's probably better for us to just stay in more of a continue to gather information mode than go. But there are some really positive things with it, and there's some positive things that the state is looking at maybe going forward. So down the road, it might be a really good possibility for us.
Okay, very interesting.
So a lot more work to do.
So I'll kind of discuss a little bit about committing. So there are a few items that we could consider and that the administration would probably recommend for committing some of these funds. The first one I touched upon in the presentation, the uncertainty around TK. So because the governor doesn't fund all of it for 3 years, one of the big cost pieces for us is going to be TK. And we're not sure what enrollment's going to look like for next year for TK because we're still to this day getting students every day enrolling in TK. So that would be one of the areas for us. The second area would also be the uncertainty around before and after school program. We still haven't nearly finalized as much as we want to or need to. I was just on an hour-long Zoom call today with Boys and Girls Club talking about it, and a lot of the uncertainty surrounding this new program. And then On top of that, we're going to implement it a year earlier than anyone else. So getting out in front, again, the Windsor way. So
I would be interested in supporting, if you need $1 million set aside out of our over 10% reserve, 500,000 into each of those programs, the TK and the after school. Could you spend a minute explaining to us, for the good of the order, would you suggest that such a designation, if that's where we go or wherever it ends up being applied to, the difference between committed and assigned designation for the money?
definitely. So the difference between committed is when you guys take action onto it. So this law states that it's either unassigned or assigned. But the difference between assigned is I actually have the power to do that as your guys' designee, myself and Jeremy. So I can go in and just create it to assigned. But this law specifically states that the board must take action on it and decide together how you guys would like to purposely commit the funds. And they can be uncommitted with board action as well. But in order for them to be restrictedly used for those purposes, then you guys would commit them, and that's the purpose.
So maybe you could help us, Jeremy and Austin. I understand the restriction or the limitation about how they can be used when we would take the step to commit them. Can we meet the $1 million getting rid of our overage on the reserves by simply assigning them if we made that designation clearly, or do we need to have them be committed? I just want to know which pot on our budget they need to show up on.
Committed.
Okay.
Nice and short.
Okay.
And as a piece of a follow-up there, you mentioned we're not sure of our enrollment numbers or what the costs will be for programs and such. So if we commit 500,000, for example, to the after-school, before-school programs, and hypothetical, but say that we draw enough kids that it pays for itself and we don't need that extra 500,000 during this school year in which they're committed, then what happens with that money? Can it roll over to the next year? Does it go back into a different fund? Do we lose it? What happens?
So once you guys commit it, I can only use it for that purpose. So let's say we don't need it for that purpose, then you as a board has the authority to uncommit it and just return it back to undesignated or assigned. Or you can commit it to something else, however you guys prefer.
Can that be done during a mid-year budget adjustment, or during the course of our regular meetings, we can adjust our budget appropriately, but it's us who have to take the action? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Any board meeting that you guys wish. Cool. Thank you, guys.
So are you looking for us to?
Give direction.
Yeah, so it's not a motion or anything, it's just more of direction?
And a motion to approve this item.
Got it. So Trustee Adams, he kind of put an idea about $500,000 for the TK, $500,000 for the after school, before and after school. And then I think we had about 400 grand is about the number. These are, how precise do we have to be on our numbers, Austin?
No, you guys are precise enough.
We're okay. Yeah. Yeah. So
Eric also had a way of kind of putting it in two lumps. I thought you had.
We can adjust it later. Yeah.
yeah, I was just trying to summarize so that way I could move to the next or to whatever we need to do. So
The additional amount, if somebody's crunching the numbers at home, the extra 400,000 goes toward the cost of living allowance into next year's raises that we're giving the 1.23 in
Correct.
addition to what we given on the previous salary schedules.
Correct.
So that makes up the 1.4 million or approximately there to get us down to that 10% level.
Perfect. Yes. So I think I got the direction I needed.
so we all in agreement on that?
I think we need to probably do it as a motion, or do we do that as adjustment to the budget when we approve the budget?
No, when you guys approve it in June 30th, then you'll motion, correct?
Okay. Okay.
In our last public hearing, we moved to accept the public hearing or to close it. Should we do that here as well? Like for our LCAP public hearing?
Yeah. I
which
think,
was
I think we need to
6.1.
have action on, it's an action
I think-
item. So we gave direction, but we also need to give approval that we received receive the report.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And we'll move on from there then. So I'll make motion to receive item 6.2, and we made direction to staff.
Can I have a second?
Yeah.
I'll second.
Yeah, now it's been moved to second. I have just a couple comments. I just want to make sure that I'm clear and I understand the budget packet. And it's coming back for final adoption in 2 weeks.
Correct.
Do you imagine, given the backroom deals as they're having the battle between the legislature and the executives, that we will have some more clarity on some of your bullet points that you indicated were a little uncertain?
Yeah, we definitely most likely will. So there's 2 laws. June 15th, the governor must pass the initial budget, or the governor and the legislature must, and then he has until June 30th to sign it. So actually, I've heard rumors of the details in it, but I don't think they've been released yet because I can't find them. Trust me, I've looked.
So the question, we have a motion and we have a second, we have a little discussion. If for whatever reason, some of the things that we're assuming right now don't come to pass, do we have to reallocate, or do we have to do another hearing and then another subsequent?
No, because
So we
with
can
these-
make adjustments if things aren't exactly how we want on a June 30th meeting. By then, all those things should be
Correct.
fixed.
Yeah, if he takes before and after school care out of his budget, I would be shocked.
Yeah, no, I would be surprised if any money goes away. But
Yeah.
you were talking about how the
Maybe add
the,
in
the,
for
the
transportation and
Senate, and those
things.
guys, they're kind of arguing over
Right.
how things should be
Definitely.
allocated because they want to get.
Sorry, Rich, actually, there's a good answer to your question. So yes, there's actually what they call a 45-day revise. And so when the governor passes this, if he passes a bill afterwards or it has significant changes in it, then I have to bring to you a budget within 45 days of July 1st when he passes it.
Got it. Okay.
That's the correct answer. Sorry.
Because sometimes, even though we're meeting on June 30th, he may not sign it till midnight, June 30th, and we've already met.
Got it.
So we may need to wait. That's what the 45 day is for.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Austin.
Thank you, guys.
So I'm
Oh,
not done.
sorry.
Sorry,
We
Bill.
haven't voted to send you forth and come back in 2 weeks. So I just wanted to make a note, make sure that my read of this was correct. It appears from, and I'm looking at page 1 of 6 on form is that 01 that you had attached in the agenda packet, that we had a negative 0.23 or a $2.3 million deficit anticipated to close out this fiscal year.
Correct.
And given the adjustments, even with moving some of the unassigned reserves, looks like we were at least predicting a $1.6 million to the positive in 22, 23.
Correct. And a lot of
And for
that.
that, I want to say thank you very much. It has
Yes.
been, this is the first time I have been on the board that we have had a projection, and I know this is conservative. There is additional revenue that, much more likely additional revenue that we'll see than additional expenses. And I don't know what Eric's experience is, but I was going back through some of my notebooks. I think this is the first time that we are not having to carve a little bit into our reserves, which is why it's always prudent to have reserves. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that. So thank you very much, Superintendent Decker and the whole crew. Our teachers, while we gave a substantial raise, we've sort of contracted a little bit, and it just seems the stars are in alignment that we're at a $1.6 million positive number when we see this budget proposal 2 weeks before we're going to adopt it. So thank you for that. I wanted to make a point of saying that.
I would add that,
Thank you, Bill.
this is my 8th year on the board. Bill's been close to that as well, but we've never been close to $60 million before. It's been 49, 52, somewhere around there. So for the state to have that much money that they're helping us with, and for us to budget safely and cautiously and such, things are in a good position now that we weren't looking this good 3 or 4 years ago, or even less than that. We were afraid that we were going to have to make many, many, many more changes than we've had to do now, and things are trending positive. So I'm thankful for that.
And I just want to, I have to say this. When Stephanie and when we got on the board, yeah, things didn't look very good and whatever. And part of the reason and part of the things that helped us get through was that the previous board, Eric and the other folks that were on the board, were wise in their budgeting, and we had a pretty good chunk of money that had been set aside that was able to help us get through those times. So while we have some money right now, I like the fact that we've caught up, or not caught up, but we've made some significant help to the teachers and the people working in the school. But also, let's keep in mind, I mean, we're all seeing the news and we're all seeing how things are kind of like on about ready to take a nice big swan dive. So let's be prudent. Let's do what we need to, but also let's make sure that the next boards have the same flexibility and opportunity to use some of our reserves if we need to. And so we were able to from previous board's decisions. And I just want to make sure that we all are aware that things do go up and things do go down. And while we're in an up year, let's kind of hang on as much as we can. That's prudent, anticipating that maybe in the year or two to come, things may be a little bit bumpy. So that's just that's my way of saying thank you to the previous boards. And let's be wise as well. And with that said, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Plus?
Aye.
That boy. All right, thank you. Thanks, Austin. All right, so that was, my pen keeps dying on me. 6.2, all right, now, moving to 6.3, back by popular demand, Lisa Saxon to go over our public hearing for the LCAP.
I'm actually presenting on behalf of Sharon Ferrer for Cali. There is no PowerPoint. That's traditional. We haven't, charters are a little bit different. But nonetheless, it does need to go through a public hearing. And I do want to let you know that I did talk to Sharon yesterday and she has run this through her school governance council. So that process has taken place. So at this time, I would just ask that you consider approval of the hearing for this evening, and then we will bring back both LCAPs under discussion action on the 30th for Windsor Unified and Cali, and then Village Charter School you'll see under consent simply because they're a direct funded charter and their board has already gone through the process of approving their LCAP. But because we're the charter oversight, I was bringing it under consent as well.
Okay, so for this, we also need a motion and approve, right?
You do.
Okay, can I have a motion? Well, is there any questions, Lisa?
Yeah, I'd move to approve and then we can maybe have board comment after a second.
Sure. Okay, so Bill made approval. Motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Somebody second, and then for discussion, Bill?
Yeah, if you could take back to Lisa, and I didn't say it with the large one for the district. Thank you for sub-allocating some of the certificated salaries. I was like that we saw VAPA and CTE, Avid was carved out, but I appreciate that. I see that some of that is with the Cali LCAP, but if you could ask Sharon perhaps, and it may be something that we evolve into next year, to the extent, and I think there is some, that there is any funding towards either VAPA, I don't know where they are on CTE for some of their middle school programs, but if they similarly, we could have a sort of a parallel to what you've put into the district LCAP this time. I think that would be good for symmetry.
Sure.
Yeah, that's my only comment. I think both of them are very good.
Sure thing.
Okay. And before we go, you will be here on the 30th? Oh, then we'll wait. We'll wait.
All righty. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? See none, and?
Aye.
We got the plus one. So if you can, Jeremy, can you write that up for Jen? Perfect. I just, a little bit out of order. Lisa, I just want you to know that you have elevated the status of Wright School District. It's been mentioned more times in the last month than probably in the last 10 years. So I just want you to know you're bringing a lot of good goodies over there. So
I bet she's going to hand off the LCAP though. No? Okay.
really, all righty. Well, let's move on to 6.4 oral recommendations regarding the salary and fringe benefits for the superintendent. This is presented by me. So I'm going to kind of stumble through this because I've never done this before, but I think, let me get some of this stuff out of the way.
Rich, I can help a little bit. Everything that's ever done with my contract or salary has to be done in open session with a discussion. So that's why we're doing it this way versus how every other unit has been discussed.
Got it. Okay. So basically, with, just so I understand too, and so everybody at home that's watching, probably your wife and the others. No, just kidding. The superintendents in each district, their salary and their situation has to always be more public. Is that correct?
There's an education code that dictates how all of this is done. And so, yes, it has to be public. It has to be agendized. It has to be a regularly scheduled meeting. So everything has to be on the up and up.
Got it. Okay, so please feel free to, anybody interrupt me, say if I'm going down the wrong way. But anyhow, so we have your contract. And when it was published that I went over, and I usually catch this stuff, I didn't catch that the year was incorrect on the document. So we had to correct the year because it was a 22-23. It's actually 2021 through 2022 school year. Actually, and I made a little mistake on the writing. So anyhow, it got published with the wrong date in it. And so I want to read this so that way this is all squared away and everybody takes care of this. So prior to the board taking action to approve the superintendent's contract, Government Code Section 5495-3, subsection C3, it requires the body to orally report to the summary of the proposed salary and compensation for the superintendent. The proposed superintendent contract provides for the superintendent with a salary of $231,592 for the school year 2021-2022, based upon being placed at step 8, commensurate with his experience. This is different than what was posted as an error was found in the year that it would take place. The increase will be retroactive to the 21-22 school year as opposed to taking place in the 22-23 school year. The superintendent will have access to the same employee-only benefits as other school district personnel. It should be noted that the superintendent will be unable to change the benefits from the employee-only plan without prior board approval, and that previously stated salary increase is commensurate with the savings realized from the capping of his benefits at the employee-only rate of $10,321. There have been no changes to the car allowance stipend and in the amount of $350 per month, or the cell phone stipend in the amount of $100 per month. So I've initialed the change that was published. Other than taking a vote or having discussion, is there anything else that I need to do to make sure this is?
You did what you had to do. Now it's up to the board.
So we don't, okay, so this is, so I guess basically this is what we're reporting out of closed session as well.
Yes, sir.
Correct. All right, so is there any comment that anybody?
No, were we looking for an action on both 6.4 and 6.5? Because what I was going to just suggest is, by consensus, we acknowledge and receive the oral recommendations. They, at least for this trustee, seem accurate. And unless there is some other action item that's needed, I would move that we consider and approve the superintendent's employment agreement as summarized in the president's report under 6.5.
Okay. I second that motion. So we don't need to actually vote on 6.4.
No, the reading of it was the action.
Okay, good. So then with 6.5, the motion made by Bill, I second the motion. Is there any discussion before we take a vote?
Thank you for a job well done this last year, and we look forward to next year. At least I do. So we've got good things going on.
I'm just going to say this because my dad was a superintendent and he never, ever, I didn't feel like he ever got paid what he was worth. And so I'm actually happy to be able to read this. Jeremy, I think you are an awesome superintendent and you're doing a great job. You really have a really good handle of a bunch of different things and how you came into our district. Hey, welcome here, COVID. And we had all kinds of things messing around and your house burning down and all the other things you had to balance. Anyhow, I just think you've done a great job. And I think you're worth every penny that we're paying. And I think that we're actually, the kids in our district are getting their value to a great degree. And I'm happy to make sure that superintendents that work hard and are excellent for our kids get compensated as such. So anyhow. All those in favor? Aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty, it's 5-0 plus 1. All righty.
Did
Thank
you just finish this meeting?
Nope. No, we have one more thing here. The future school board agenda items. I would just like to see if we could somehow, I know we're all busy and we kind of things, but I really appreciate, Bill, you bringing it up and not reminding us, but just bringing it, as Jen likes to say, I like to bring it to the top again. The situation that happened in Texas. And, it's funny, every morning I think about that a little bit because we're right now, we're raising one of our grandsons. And when you become a grandparent, whether you're not raising kids, you kind of start to have a little distance between kids and you kind of forget certain things. And then when you wake up every morning and you got a little guy and they're smiling, they're happy, and they're doing all their different things, it just brings it back really close how precious each one of these little guys are. Little guys, little girls, all of them. And so with that said, I mean, I can't even imagine how the parents down there feel or how anybody else feels. So I really want to, and Bill's brought this up earlier, I really want to make this one of our next year's things that we are going to get done. We are going to accomplish next year. Because right now, if somebody called, we all rotate around as being the board president, right? And if the press would have called me after that action and said, hey, what has Windsor done to make sure that this never happened in Windsor or that we have done whatever? I wouldn't feel 100% confident or comfortable that we've done all that we can do. And I don't know what all those things are, but I think that we need to make this more of a priority, that we, almost like the town council, I think they have a thing on the very top of their agenda. It's like any information or action on something, I can't remember, one or two things around the town. Is there any discussion? No discussion at this point. Okay, and then they move on. I would like us to almost put that at the top. How are we, I have the word hardening our campuses. That's not necessarily the way I want to put it out there, but what are we doing to know, all of us as parents and as board trustees, and then as staff and teachers, where are we at? What are we doing? Are we prepared for something unfortunate? And what are our preparations? And all the other things that go along with it to be defined. I mean, I'm not an expert in it. I'm not even a bystander really. So I want us to, Bill brought this up a year ago, maybe. It's been a year. So to talk to the fire folks, the emergency first responders and those folks, I think we need to prioritize this higher. Not prioritize it, that's not what I meant. It is a priority to us, and we're really busy with all the other things that we have to do normally, but I think we have to do a little extra in that area to feel comfortable, for me to feel comfortable, and I think everybody else the same way. So however we have to do that, I'm not the organizational guy that's good at these kind of things, but I know you are. So I would really like to let you know that I think we as a group, we really want to.
Make the community comfortable.
Yeah.
To add on, I really appreciated Bill's words at the beginning of the meeting. And I think that there are, I can think of different things that have happened in our different campuses that have made them more secure. We've taken a lot of steps, but I think if I could summarize what I think you're saying is we want alignment between our board and our, law enforcement, our fire. And then we also want the communication piece to make sure that we all know and that everyone knows what students, parents, families, community, that and staff know what we've done and what our protocols are.
I mean, to Jackson's point, I think our schools are actually in pretty good shape. I think when I go to campus, I see a lot of things that are really, really positive in that way. And so it's that nagging thing of when you get older, you go like, what am I forgetting? What did we miss out on? In Texas, it was unfortunate, and I haven't really delved into it a lot. I've been so busy, I haven't been able to refocus. But what I've picked up on the news and different things is that mistakes were made, and that I don't even know what they all were. And that's not the issue. The issue is that mistakes were made. So and if something happened here, I'm sure mistakes would be made. Let's do what we can to reduce the number of mistakes that might be made to as many as little as possible. So anyhow, I mean,
I
Bill,
wanted to add on something too. I think as the newest board member, I don't understand what the process is if at school, a teacher or a counselor or somebody else notices that a student, has having challenges with their behavior and their mental health. I don't understand like what the process actually looks like. Do they get referred to a counselor? Does a call, is a call made home? Like what does that look like? Because from what I've read, it seems to me that that is a piece of this picture. When a student is experiencing mental health challenges, or they're feeling isolated, or they have checked out of the traditional school systems. So I'd like to have a better understanding of what our process looks like on the mental health side.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, this is just more to bubble it up and go for it. But I think it's something that
It's definitely a focus for us, I promise you. It's a major part of our plan for next year.
okay.
Because this requires a lot of stakeholder engagement, which happens when people are in the building.
I mean, as a point, just so you know, so I take care of my company. We take care of a lot of lakes, right? And a lot of these lakes are pretty large, and they have dams. And these dams, they have EAPs, emergency action plans. So, and in those plans, I can forward it to you. It might give you some ideas. It is amazing. The first time I saw one, how many different agencies there are in the county here, communications, this person, that person. I mean, so and literally every year we have to get all those stakeholders, there's about 13 of them, all together and say, hey, this dam here it is. If there's the dam breaks or whatever, the inundation study is here. So, this town, that sheriff, that police department, I mean, all of them, it's amazing. I think we need to have some sort of an EAP for our school district.
I do want to be clear because I want to make sure everybody understands. We do have our school safety plans. They're required to be approved in February of every year. We have a lot in place. What I'm saying we're going to focus on is refinement.
Right.
And to really see if they are fulfilling the full needs that we have as a school district, especially in light of what happened in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really where we're focusing our attention next year.
Right. Well,
Excuse me.
And because just like, so for example, we worked at Spring Lake the other day. The county department of ag came out. They wanted to visit with us and make sure we had everything checked off. And so one of the things that we have in our trucks, we have all the medical places all around Sonoma County. It's on a list. It says, hey, if there's a problem, you can go to this hospital, that hospital, blah, blah, blah. Right? As a trustee, I would love to have a little something that's in my truck or on my phone or whatever. It says, hey, if this is a problem, we got this. I mean, we have the plan, but I wanted to
No, I know what you mean.
bring
I
it
do.
up.
Who's the incident command coordinator?
Right.
Communications person.
Yeah,
Explain-
what number
which-
to
which-
call,
which
what
one?
email.
Those kind of things, so Bill, thank you for bringing it up originally. And so so we're good.
Yes, sir.
We're good.
So Heather has already
Oh.
shared that the teachers got a raise.
Yes, we were working. We were working.
Email's been sent.
Yay.
So I had a question about the summer. I know we're meeting on the 30th and going to be another full agenda of many of these things we've taken the first step on. I heard someone say we weren't planning a regular meeting in July.
There isn't a regular meeting.
So what
planned
I
in
was
July.
interested in is whether it's a board workshop, we want to have a separate carve out for board goals, which we have done simply with the governance team. But to think a little bit about that, what input you may need from us. You have a number of new cabinet positions now. Whether a retreat kind of thing with, your cabinet and the principals or whatever. I think we can be flexible. I think everybody needs to know if sometime between July 1 and we start school like the 3rd of August this year, whenever it is.
11th, but yes,
Just to figure out
early.
how we might use the time. Because I think the planning, culture building, collegiality amongst the governance team, and the school leadership, your DAT and the DLT, I think we haven't done that kind of retreat. I'm trying to think, Lisa, it's 3 years at least, I think, that we did one where we all got together, and you may want to talk to some of the people who were there. I find those very useful. I don't think we need to do them every year.
I
But as
have
we're
one.
rolling out of a post-COVID situation, it may be something we think about. I just wanted to plant that seed that you and Rich and your team can talk about, because I think if we don't start thinking about it now, it'll be September, October, and we thought, gosh, we would have been good if we were able to get together before the school year started. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, God, yeah,
No,
yeah.
no chickens, no more.
And now, Stephanie, you can motion for it.
I'll move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Yay, we did it.
Look at that, man. Good timing too.
Good job, Jackson.